People, deluded, I'm back again. Now, have you seen Unai Emery's comments floating around on Twitter? I believe he's given an interview to a Spanish outlet. I've read it, and well, courtesy of Google Translates, and I thought I'd offer my opinions on it. Something of nothing, but we might as well crack on with only the bits I deem relevant, people, before I begin. A segment he said is, throughout my career, I was willing to avoid being sacked. Here at Arsenal, it is the opposite. I want to build something for the long term. If you lot remember, people, and a couple of times when I've spoken on Unai Emery, I said one, not luxury, but one point he could look at as Arsenal is that he's not going to be, when you're at PSG and these clubs, it's heavily scrutinised. And I said, few managers have probably taken two jobs within quick succession that polarised two opposites, essentially, and going from PSG, where it's spend money, Champions League stars, to where Arsenal currently find themselves. One luxury is that he'll get time. Obviously, there's a debate to be had about finances and things like that. You can have all the time in the world. If you're not given the finances and the right tools, what can you do? There is also that debate. And that's also a positive thing, because there's not that monkey on your back of, I'm going to get sacked, I'm this and that. Anyone in the hot seat at Chelsea, to be fair, anyone at the hot seat probably at PSG, Madrid, all of these clubs, any national team boss, England boss, well, Southgate exception to the rule recent in my lifetime. You know, these jobs, every job has pressure, but and it can bring the best out of you, but it can also be a negative effect as well. Also, if we look at it playing devil's advocate, that could also, because he's not going to be judged on certain things and heavily scrutinised. For instance, his job right now, yes, people will ask questions of him technically what he wants to do. But way before that, you have it's not his players, he needs to get his players, it's all time and things like that. Whether it's your first or 10th season at PSG, Madrid and that, they don't care for them sort of things. So that's sort of less scrutiny on that regards. And when you look at the young players in the squad, you can get around that sort of thing. It's nice to see he wants to build for the long term and things, and this could, like I said, it could be a big, if he gets it right, it could be a long term thing for him and a chance to really, he is a top manager in my opinion, but to shut some doubters up and things like that, man. In regards to his style of play, though, and I love Emery, man. He also spoke around about people, and he offered some notes in that when he was in France. I think I've got it, but when he was in France, he was kind of taking the mick out of a bit for trying to adopt and adapt to the language. And obviously, us were a bit different. We praise him for even the slightest bit attempt of English because it shows encouragement, and I personally like that, man. I feel he could. You look at when Pochettino came and stuff at Southampton, he did a good job. But I remember when Poch never spoke English. He could speak it, but he didn't do it for whatever reason. You can still get your message across in whatever language. But I feel when you learn the language of the players, stuff that you might want to say in Spanish, when someone's translating it to English or vice versa, it might be lost in emotion, like the emotional impact. So it's nice to see that. It shows commitment as well, man, that he wants to be here for the long term to learn English. It shows enthusiasm because he's demanding of himself, both on the field and off it, in the same way of the players. So me personally, I like that he tries to learn English. And away from this, I always hate when people might have an accent or they speak English, but they have trouble and things like that. I always get annoyed when people take the mick out of things like that. Cause how can you mock someone when they're able to learn multiple languages or speak two languages, bilingual, whatever it is? Like, do you know how smart their brain is? But that's how silly society is. So big up Emery for attempting in that, man. But in regards to the style of play, the one thing I kind of thought, Emery, I love you, my guy, but it's a bit, he said, I want us to be a chameleon team, to be able to play in possession in static attack against close opponents or to counter-attack. Now, people, you know me, I like Unai Emery's tactics. We've counter-attacked to devastating effect. Defensively, he's trying to improve us and things like that. And I want us, don't get me wrong, to counter-attack and to dominate. He didn't say dominate, but to be good in possession. I want that. But when someone says chameleon to me, that's all. I like to see that. We could say we've been a chameleon team at sometimes against the top six. When you look at how we've played at home against Chelsea, the victory in the 1-1 draw against Liverpool fans, as they say, Spurs as well, probably United as well. Chameleon team. When we marry the defensive aspects in that, it typically coincides with three at the back. In that Unai Emery, he assesses the opposition and then he looks at Lacazette, Aubameyang and the technical base players and marries them together. I personally feel that is great against teams like that. And as much as I like Unai Emery's tactics and that, there's also a case to be said against the smaller teams. We're possibly overly cautious. They're tough to break down anyways. But the way we probably set up and in terms of possession, probably just trying to find Kohler in terms of width on the left hand side, it makes it easier for teams, particularly teams like Burnley, like Palace, and what's the other one we lost to? Brighton, or drew with Brighton, or whatever. Teams that are decent defensively, that have to defend for their lives in the Premier League, technically, and are better, well, slightly better than us, to be fair. We make it easier for them. So the chameleon, and when someone says a chameleon, obviously I hear the slyness, the calculatedness, the cerebral approach of what a chameleon is. But when you think of a chameleon, people, one word that can't lie, is it just me, or do you think of coward? Like, do you think of cowardly, or does that word find its way around you? I'm not saying Emery's a coward and things like that for people who can't comprehend it. What I'm saying is, if you're a chameleon, isn't that always too much thinking about the opposition? I get it. We need to, Arsenal Football Club, for a while, we haven't thought about the opposition enough. We need to marry the two, but we need to think about what we can do. Chameleon just seems to me as always never kind of proactive, trying to dominate something. It's always hiding from something. It's always reactive. It's always just trying to survive and things like that. That, again, I'm probably looking into it too deep, but that and stuff. But that one don't really sit well with me, my guy, man. Like I said, sometimes we need to do our thing, but that one don't really sit well with me, Emery, man. But he's also spoke about on claims he's a defensive manager. As I've said, I am competitive, and that is what I intend to transfer to my players. At Arsenal, we want to raise the intensity little by little without losing the many qualities we have. I don't necessarily think he's a defensive manager. I think he's still trying to discover himself in the Premier League. Probably before his Arsenal time, you could say he was a bit pragmatic in terms of his tactics. But right now at Arsenal, I think the right word is cautious. I feel I don't know if he trusts the players to make them certain mistakes and learn enough. But I think he's probably a bit too cautious at times. I wouldn't say he's defensive, but I have previously said I think our goals cloud a lot of our games in terms of chance creations and stuff. And to be fair, the last 2 years under Wenger, our ball playing and stuff weren't quite there, so it's been on decline for a while. So I do think there's a lot to be said, man. And to be fair, we've got attacking players. He's gonna have to, if he is defensively minded, he's gonna have to adapt, because we're always gonna have, whether they're good or not, whatever people say, Arsenal Football Club are always gonna have players, definitely since Wenger took over in my gen, that are more technically based, whether they're big 6 foot and monsters like Vieira with the technical and the athleticism, or they're tiny like Santi Cazorla. We've got these players, so we can't sell our way short. I don't necessarily care for I don't necessarily care for, when people say style of play, they always attribute it to Pep Guardiola sort of thing, to forward thinking, to a million passes. Style of play can be defensive. I don't necessarily care for having the most expansive style of play. I would just like us to be a bit more on the front foot, to try and get the bit between our teeth a bit more in games and put oppositions under a bit more pressure defensively. Also shoot when the time presents itself. Also create different chances. I want to see midfield provoking situations, whether that's running from deep or balls over the top. Consistent movement from the front men, whether it's a front one alone with 2 wingers, three up there or 2 up there. I feel we are quite predictable in that, at Arsenal is side to side. We're going to try and pick that lock, and that is great at times, and I love it. But if you don't buy raffle ticket, the more raffle tickets you buy, the more chance you have of winning the lottery. So by that logic, I would like to see us shoot more. But what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, he spoke on titles. He said he doesn't promise us titles. I promise to compete. What Wenger did in this club was very big. He managed to give it a touch of quality to make the game more fluid and colourful. But little by little, he lost the competitive aspect. That is what was transmitted to me and what I was hired for when I was interviewed by the owners. The economic potential of United, City and Liverpool is greater than ours, but by history and structure, Arsenal is among the top 10 clubs in Europe, and we have to place it there again. So he wants to help us. That's what I like to see. That's one thing I like about him. He's not someone, if there's poo on the wall, he's going to tell you it's smelling like a perfume shop. He's going to tell you how it is within reason. He's not going to play coy. As much as I liked Wenger and I loved Wenger, even though he needed to step down, to some fans that can't comprehend some points, it did come across at periods that he's insulting intelligence with just sometimes just say it how it is. I like Emery because he does that, to be fair with you. All you can do is promise to be competitive, to try and install that competitive nature and aspect and improve us defensively and all of the basic elementary roots that go in terms of being a competitive side. If we get them things right, then you can start talking about several things, but you cannot do anything major until you can defend, until you can go in hostile environments away from home and get away with results on a consistent basis, play with consistency, and play to a high standard consistently and ultimately be inspired. It's going to take a while. Some even say it's got to get worse before it gets better, is a famous saying, but it is what it is, man. You can't promise us titles. You can't, because we ain't got the money to promise titles. If we were City, you could promise titles, because it doesn't matter how we do it, just by purely pouring money at it. And I'm not saying City have done that, because Pep's done the coaching thing. Money can get you out of situations. From what we're told, what we see, we haven't got the money to get us out of the situation. So we're going to need to, a lot of it, a heavy bit of it is going to be coaching. It's going to have to be the players that are identified to take this club forward. They're going to have to be coached. Some of these young players that are deemed worthy to move forward with are going to have to be coached. Coaching is one thing Unai Emery isn't going to be able to get away from. And as much as, even if some players that weren't bought by him are here next season, I think some of these guys can't necessarily improve, but some of them you're going to have to look at Unai Emery and say, what's going on? Because as much as I feel he needs money and things, coaching was a big part of this. Like I said at the beginning, 2 different jobs in PSG and Arsenal. You know what you're stepping into at PSG, and you know what you're stepping into at Arsenal, especially within the structure, especially when you hear Sanye's comments about we're moving away from a manager per se, and it's a head coach working in terms of the model for those that seen the Arsenal vid. I have nothing more to add, but for those people that don't support Unai Emery, how can you read this interview and not get behind him, man? You just want him to do well. I believe in the guy, man. He's giving me stuff to... Obviously, I'm still in wait-and-see mode, but he's giving me stuff to support and get behind. And next season, he's going to be judged harsher. There's going to... a lot of these things about he's not his players and etc. are not going to be able to wash. But for now, I ain't got nothing more to add. So, people, stay safe. Deluded. I'm out.